Story 1. I never thought I'd find myself entertained while waiting in a passport line, but Iceland has a way of surprising you, even at 6:30 in the morning. Picture this: I'm standing in a line that seems to stretch on for miles, with around 200 other non-EU travelers, all of us bleary-eyed and half awake, hoping against hope that we'll make our connecting flights. My flight landed at 6:30 am, and my connection was set to take off at 7:20 am. Not a lot of wiggle room there, but it's not like I was alone in this struggle. Everyone around me was in the same boat, just silently willing the line to move faster. Now, I'm not one to stress over things I can't control, especially not before I've had my coffee. So, like most people around me, I decided to just stand there, wait it out, and pray that the flight attendants at my gate were feeling merciful. But then, out of nowhere, this family at the back of the line decided they were too special to wait with the rest of us peasants. I first noticed the dad, dressed like he was about to hit the beach, even though we were in Iceland and it was stupidly early in the morning. He looked around for a moment, like he was plotting something, and then, without a second thought, made his way right up to the front, where this poor kid, probably around 20 years old, was just trying to keep his eyes open. The dad leans in and says something about how his flight is leaving soon and could he please cut in front. And I'm thinking, buddy, you and everyone else here. But the kid, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, just shrugs and lets him through. I mean, who has the energy to argue at that hour? But the dad doesn't just stop there. Oh no, he turns around, waves to the rest of his clan who, by the way, are all dressed in matching tropical vacation outfits and yells, "He said we can go in front of him." And just like that, 6 other people come striding up, all smiles like they've just won some kind of jackpot. That's when the real fun started. The entire line, which had been this quiet, resigned mass of people, suddenly came to life. You could feel the collective annoyance rising like a wave. Someone near the front shouted, "What do you think you're doing?" And that set off a chorus of complaints from all sides. "Go to the back." "You're not special," people were practically chanting it at this point. The dad, realizing he was now public enemy number 1, tried to reason with the crowd. "But we have a connection that leaves at 7:30, he pleaded, as if that was some kind of get-out-of-jail-free card. The response was instant and unified. "We all do too." It was one of those moments where you could almost hear the record scratch in his brain as he looked around and realized that, yeah, he wasn't the only one in a hurry. It was actually kind of satisfying to watch him squirm. You could see the gears turning as he tried to figure out what to do next. Finally, with a sheepish look on his face, he waved his family back, and they all slunk back to their original spot at the end of the line. It was like watching a dog with its tail between its legs after being scolded. The line settled back into its sleepy, slow-moving rhythm. But there was this unspoken sense of camaraderie now, like we'd all just shared in some small victory. I kept inching forward, the clock ticking down to my flight's departure time. The minutes felt like they were slipping away faster than the line was moving. By the time I finally made it to the front, it was already 7:10 and my heart was racing as I handed over my passport. But the officer barely glanced at it before stamping it and waving me through. I took off like a shot, weaving through the terminal like I was in some kind of airport obstacle course. Luckily, my partner, who's EU, had zipped through the speedy line way ahead of me and was already at the gate. Bless their heart, they were pleading with the gate agents to hold the plane for just a few more minutes. I was one of the last people to board, and I could feel the glares of the already seated passengers as I made my way down the aisle. But honestly, I was just relieved to have made it. As I settled into my seat and the plane taxied down the runway, I couldn't help but wonder about the line cutters. I didn't see them again after they slunk back to the end of the line, so who knows if they made their flight. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But one thing's for sure, they won't be forgetting that little lesson in humility anytime soon. Looking back, it was kind of hilarious how this small drama played out in such an ordinary place. You don't expect to find yourself rooting for a bunch of strangers in a passport line, but there we all were, united by a shared sense of justice, or at least a shared dislike of people who think the rules don't apply to them. It's funny how a situation like that can bring people together, even if it's just for a few minutes. So yeah, that was my morning in Iceland. A passport line, a family of line cutters, and a bunch of tired, cranky travelers who weren't about to let someone else's entitlement ruin their day. It wasn't the kind of morning I'd planned, but in a weird way, it made the whole experience a little more memorable. Plus, it gave me a pretty decent story to tell. Story 2. I'm not sure if this qualifies as pro, but I got revenge on a jerk I used to volunteer as a firefighter with. This was in the early to mid-2000s. I decided to join the local fire department as a volunteer firefighter, and I did it for about 5 years. It was a great experience. The training consisted of 3 months of fire training 2 nights a week and all-day Saturday, followed by emergency medical technician EMT training, which was another 3 months. About a year in, I was asked to help train some new recruits. One of the lieutenants, Amy, was a short, middle-aged woman who was so full of energy that she could make a grown man cry. She was one of those people who commanded both fear and respect wherever she went. Honestly, she was a great lieutenant and a great person. When she wasn't being a drill sergeant, she was extremely kind and generous. She would often bake cakes and treats and deliver them to the various stations in our department. However, in this new academy class that I was asked to help with, there was a cocky kid we'll call Aaron. Aaron talked big during training and acted like he was the all-American hero, as if he was going to be the lead star in the sequel to Backdraft. He performed moderately well in training, but he was far from the top of the class. He got assigned to Amy's station, which was a pretty quiet one in the department. A few months after he started, Amy swung by my station one night to say hi. She brought us the motherlode cake from Claim Jumper, a massive 6-layer cake. She explained that she had treated her crew to a night out at Claim Jumper, which must have cost a lot of money. I think she took out about 8 people and even bought a whole cake to top it all off. They had eaten the first 2 layers, so she gave us the remaining 4. We thanked her profusely, and she left. Back then, the big social media platform was MySpace, so I decided to look up some of the people in the department to make friends. I came across Aaron's page and noticed some photos of him and the rest of his crew at Claim Jumper with Amy. However, when I read the comments, he bragged about how he had purposefully ordered the most expensive dinner, appetizers, and drinks since Amy was buying. He boasted about how he was going to take advantage of her stupidity. This alone made me angry because she was being so nice and generous. What an ungrateful, selfish person. Then I read the rest of his profile. He had videos and memes on his page glorifying himself as a brave firefighter, bragging about running into burning buildings, and how he was such a hero. He was flirting with girls, blatantly trying to impress them with how brave he was. Keep in mind, he had just graduated from the academy 3 months prior and hadn't even gone to emergency medical technician school. He had never been to a house fire, and all he basically did was carry gear for the other fully qualified firefighters. It was too much for me to tolerate. So, here's the revenge. I printed off copies of his MySpace page, including his comments about Amy and his toxic bragging. I made multiple copies and took them to every station in the department. We all had pagers. Wow, I feel old, and a small keyboard at each station to send out text messages. I made an anonymous, all-staff page to everyone in the department. I had to keep it brief since I couldn't fit a ton of characters, but I sent out his MySpace info and told everyone how he treated Amy. Within an hour, Aaron had cleared out his MySpace page of all posts, photos, and so on. A couple of days later, he deleted his account. It's a good thing I made so many copies. Immediately after this happened, he stopped coming to volunteer, and a few weeks later, I heard that he had quit. I later talked to Amy and admitted that I was the one who sent the page. I told her I hated how he treated her, and she thanked me. She seemed really sad and hurt by what he had done. But being the tough, short lady that she was, she quickly got back to being an actual brave firefighter. She later started dating and married a fire chief who also helped at the academy. I've lost touch with her, but I hope she's doing well. She seemed pretty happy the last time I saw her. Story 3. I recently had an emergency appendectomy and recovery has been slow. I had to take time off from my own athletics, but even worse, from coaching in the children's sports program I'm involved with. The experience made me step back and realize that I had really built my whole identity around being active and healthy. So, the hit my physical abilities took as a result of being sick, along with the healing process, has left me feeling lost. I've been working to regain the joy I used to experience from exercise, without constantly comparing myself to how I used to be. I try not to think, "Oh, you used to be so much faster," or "Your technique used to be so much stronger," or "You don't fit in anymore," or any other negative thoughts. Instead, I'm focusing on just enjoying myself, regardless of the level I'm currently at. But ironically, the anxiety about not being able to do what I used to has made regaining those abilities difficult. This anxiety has made me self-conscious about exercising in public spaces. However, I was finally starting to get over it, as friends convinced me that the source of my concerns was all in my head. There's no way to get back to it other than training, so despite the anxiety, I started running again as soon as the doctors approved it. I went to the local track and did a few slow laps each morning, gradually building up speed every few days. I've only just been authorized to add some sprints and bodyweight strength training to the mix. Occasionally, there were other people at the track, but I didn't really notice because I run with headphones on and try to zone out during these lighter sessions. But little did I know my friends were wrong. It was not all in my head. I was being watched, and more than that, I was being judged. This is my absolute worst nightmare at this stage of building back my strength and speed. On Friday, I was setting up for practice at the kids program when the head coach asked me into his office because a parent had a complaint. A parent I didn't know too well, Karen, was there, and he said she had specific complaints about me. The meeting almost didn't happen because of Karen's initial refusal to put on a mask, which is currently required in our facilities. But eventually, her desire to report me for whatever she thought she had on me overrode her freedoms. I was a bit nervous, as anyone would be when called to meet with their boss over a complaint, but I figured it was a classic case of, "My child should start more," or "I know my child tried out as a midfielder, but I want them to switch to defense, that kind of rules don't apply to me thing." But instead, I sat down in the office, and Karen was playing my boss a video of me running on the track. She had filmed it from afar. The track is surrounded by stadium-style risers. I was horrified not only because no one is ever completely comfortable seeing themselves on video, but also because I was just embarrassed about how slow I was. But most importantly, I was shocked that a virtual stranger, I'd met her personally maybe 4 times, ever was filming me while I ran on my own time at a private facility. She then went on to explain that her 8-year-old son, one of the players on my squad, was lapping me in the video. She insisted that the coaches need to hold themselves to higher athletic standards than the young players if they want to prepare them for college teams. Again, her son is 8 years old. Apparently, her son would sometimes be running on the track while her older child was practicing on a nearby field. I never noticed, as the child is still relatively new, and I don't pay much attention to other people on the track. My boss patiently but firmly explained to Karen that my physical abilities are not the parents' concern. He added that all personnel are closely managed by the head coaches, who understand each unique situation and what's appropriate. He assured her that her son wouldn't be impacted. Karen then went on to say that my being out of shape was probably connected to why I'd been taking so much time off lately. Well, technically yes, it is because I was in the hospital. She also complained that the personnel changeover isn't good for the kids. My boss again reiterated that the head coaches hadn't changed or taken any time off, and that I was still one of the most skilled in the area I instruct. He emphasized that this was not her concern. She asked if there was someone else she could speak to, but he explained that he was the owner and founder of this program, so no, there was not. I knew my boss was intentionally avoiding saying what had happened to me, or even alluding to a health issue to protect my privacy. I figured that maybe being transparent with her would show her how ridiculous she was being, and keep her tuition dollars in our program during a difficult time for sports clubs. But when I explained, she just turned to the boss and said, Well, maybe you should furlough her until she's healed and bring on a healthy coach in the meantime, because my son needs someone out there who can keep up with him. My boss respected what I was trying to do, but made it clear that we weren't going further with that strategy. He wanted to avoid setting a precedent of sharing coaches' personal circumstances, telling her why people take time off or what their health status may be is not her concern because the program manages that and makes appropriate decisions. She kept kicking up a fuss, but the coach finally told her he had to get back out on the field, back to her son and everyone else's kids. She started physically leaving, but continued fussing about how she was not satisfied and would not be recommending us to other parents. Pro tip: that's not the way to conduct yourself with the people who make recommendations to scouts concerning family culture and team interaction. The coach wasn't preparing to leave. Instead, he stopped her in her tracks to tell her that if she was found to be surveilling or otherwise harassing any staff members again, she would be permanently banned from the program. No games or practices, no team social events, no presence in our buildings, and no clemency. So, that was pretty satisfying. Her son is a good, average kid, and I'm glad the consequences were focused on booting her out rather than limiting his opportunities to have fun playing. We then went out and had a great, happy, and safe practice. This was still a pretty upsetting event for me personally, and I'll never unsee that discouraging video of me running, but it was ultimately reassuring to know that the other staff members have my back. Leaving Karen in the dust is just another step on my road to recovery. Story 4. I teach Kenpo Karate as a second-degree black belt. I also have an assistant, Kara, who is a first-degree black belt in her own right. I don't own the gym, my instructor does, but since he's gotten older, Kara and I handle the younger classes while he manages the business side of things, plus the adult class. We have 3 classes. Kids class ages 5-10. Intermediate class ages 11-15. Adult class ages 16 and up. On to the story. So, the kids class had just ended when a woman walked in with her son. She said her 13-year-old son wanted to take karate lessons, so I shook hands with her and had her sit down with my instructor to fill out the waivers and get his uniform measurements. Other students filed in for the intermediate class, and Kara and I got down to business. I took the bulk of the class, around 15 kids, while Kara went one-on-one with the new student to teach him basic strikes and stances. Not 5 minutes later, I heard Kara upset, telling the new boy to do 10 push-ups. Why? He called Kara, who's essentially a volunteer, an extremely rude name. Karen, the mother, stood up and said her son couldn't do push-ups, as she didn't want him to be sore. Kara let him do the push-ups on his knees, but not 5 minutes later, she made him do 20 more since he'd now called her a highly inappropriate name. For reference, Kara is in her early 20s, and the boy is 13. Not to mention, there were other parents and kids present as well. It was completely inappropriate. So, I walked over and asked Kara to switch with me. As she did, she gave me wide eyes and mouthed, "What the heck?" I then walked over and asked the boy why he insulted my assistant, Kara. He said he doesn't like girls. When I asked him what he meant, he said he only listens to his dad or other boys. He won't listen to me at all. He needs some discipline. The mother confirmed to me, chuckling, as if raising a problem child is something to laugh about. "When do I get a black belt like you have?" the boy asked me. Mind you, he'd been punching the air the entire time. This boy was aggressively hyper. "Well, it takes quite a while. I've been training since I was 5 and earned my black belt at 21, so it took me a long time," I explained. "Nah, I don't want to wait that long. I want mine now," he said, his chubby face now red and sweaty from the shadow boxing. The mother motioned me over and whispered in my ear, "Do you think you could give him one, just to make him happy?" "No, sorry. He has to earn one. We're not a belt factory." "Well, he never gets told no." "I'm sorry, but that's not how we do things here. I have money. I can pay you extra." "No, sorry. We only give belts when they're earned." After several minutes of arguing and a conversation that led nowhere, Karen snapped at me. "I paid you to give my son a black belt." She stood up and pointed a finger in my face. It was so sudden that I reflexively took a step back. "Hey, calm down, lady," some of the other parents chimed in. Before I could reply to Karen, I heard a loud commotion behind me. I heard more parents and students shouting. I turned and saw the new boy smacking and hitting a girl in the class. Kara was shouting, "Hey, stop!" However, this girl that the new boy was hitting was a purple belt and quite skilled in her own right. She loaded a front kick and hit the boy square in his stomach. He shouted and doubled over, crying in pain. I was so incredibly proud of her. "Hey, that little girl hurt my son." Karen ran past me onto the mat and got in the face of the 14-year-old girl her son had just attacked. This girl was already scared and started to cry, but Karen escalated the situation by shoving her in the chest. Kara got between them, visibly enraged. I immediately rushed over and tried to defuse the situation, but neither of them was having it. Parents stood up and started shouting, "Keep your hands off my daughter." The girl's father, who was with the other parents, yelled at Karen. He started approaching aggressively but backed off when he realized that Kara and I, both black belts, were standing by her. Now, you should know something about Kara. She's under 5 feet tall, less than 110 pounds soaking wet, but she can still best me on the mat any day. She's fast, accurate, and insanely flexible. She can control her body and perform techniques that I simply can't. So, Kara and Karen got into a shouting match with each other. I told Karen, "Leave with your kid and don't come back. Don't you ever lay a hand on any of my students. Do you understand?" I raised my voice, genuinely upset. "Forget you. My son needs a black belt, and you won't give him one?" she screamed at me. "Your son is out of control. He attacked our students," Kara interjected. But this set Karen off as she reached out and tried to slap Kara in the face. Ha ha ha. Big mistake. Having had enough, Kara parried the slap and fired an absolutely vicious leg kick right into the meat of Karen's inner thigh with nothing held back. The slap sound of Kara's shin connecting with Karen's thigh echoed off the ceiling like a slab of meat hitting the floor. It was glorious. Karen gasped as she fell onto the mat in a heap. Oh my goodness," she exclaimed as her son got up and rushed at Kara. I got in front of her and grabbed the boy's wildly swinging arms. He hit me a few times, but I refused to hit children. I let him tire himself out. One of the parents called the police. After interviewing everyone involved, they determined that Kara and I acted in self-defense. Neither of us wanted to pursue assault charges against Karen, but the parents of the girl Karen shoved rightly felt differently, so Karen was hauled away in handcuffs. Karen said she'd sue Kara and me in civil court, but since we have legal waivers, I hope nothing comes of that. As for the boy, I honestly feel bad. His childhood has been marred by poor parenting, and I wish we could have had more time to help him. I particularly dislike his views of women and feel like I really could have helped turn him around. Maybe, maybe not. So yeah, that was my experience tonight. Hope you all enjoy reading it more than I did going through it. Story 5. This incident blew up in March 2021, in the middle of lockdowns and stuff. It's a story about someone whose ambition was bigger than their ethics and the law, and it comes back to bite them. At the time, I was working as a manager in a mid-sized business. While I was there, I was assigned a new member to my team. I'll call her Evil. Evil was in her mid-20s and was pretty fresh out of college. She was the kind of person who could talk your ear off about all of her ideas and plans and what she was working on, but never really seemed to have anything to show for it. When I talked to her about clients complaining that she wasn't getting back to them, she would always have an excuse about how difficult they were, how snowed under she was, and how she had written an email, but it must have gotten lost in spam, so on and so forth. Basically never her fault. It got to the point where after one of our monthly meetings I called her in and explained that if she couldn't get her tasks done, she needed to let us know so we could help delegate resources to make sure things weren't slipping through the cracks. I'll admit, I was pretty direct. Her performance was impacting the whole team, and my job was literally to keep the team on track. I get that people can be under pressure, that there can be stuff going on at home which impacts work, and that sometimes people need a bit of help. But if every time I ask about a project you say, yep, everything's good, I've got it under control, and then it all falls apart and your only response is to blame the client, then we have a problem. I explained that I wasn't going to start formal performance management or anything like that, but from now on I'd like her to check in with me on Monday mornings for 10 minutes to go over objectives for the week and to check if she needed support with any of her clients. I know it isn't fun to be micromanaged, so I tried to keep these check-ins short and mostly just offer assistance on stuff. She clearly hated my guts though, and apparently was hatching her own revenge. Now part of my role included use of a purchasing card, which wasn't in my name, but I had access to. I was given the card to basically make small purchases for the office or spend up to $500 on clients. The card was kept in an office I shared with another team manager, where we both could access it when we needed it. One day I get a call from accounts asking about a few abnormal purchases on the card. A Photoshop subscription, a couple of Uber Eats orders, an HBO subscription, etc. I say I don't know anything about them and they should check with the other team manager. Apparently the other team manager didn't know anything about them either, because after the weekend I got called into the big boss's office. After my colleague and I had denied involvement, accounts had started calling Adobe and Uber and stuff to find out where the transactions were coming from. They said that not only were the accounts in my name, they were registered to an email address with my name in it too. I can't describe what it felt like to be in that meeting. I felt physically sick. I couldn't work out what was happening. I was so shocked I didn't know what to say. I felt like I was about to get fired, and I couldn't understand how that was even possible. The director was going on about how access to the card was a privilege, and that I had signed an agreement about appropriate use, and so on and so forth. I denied that I had been using it inappropriately, and the boss listened, but I could tell he wasn't that convinced. To be honest, in my head, I was gaslighting myself and worrying that I had somehow saved the card in Google, and maybe my wife had been accidentally using it or something. It was terrible, and I found myself apologizing and saying, I don't know how this happened. I assure you that I know that none of those expenses are appropriate uses of company funds. There must have been some kind of mistake. Can I please have the details and look into it, etc., etc. When I finally got out of that office, job still intact. Well, barely. Evil was waiting for me at my office door. She was grinning from ear to ear and sweetly explained she had been waiting for our morning meeting. I told her something had come up and we'd do the meeting tomorrow, and she said, "Oh, will you be in tomorrow?" Confused, since I didn't know I was in a revenge thread at the time, I just replied, "Yes, why would I not be in tomorrow?" And she just sipped her tea and said, "Oh, no reason," turned around and went back to her desk. Something felt off, but I was still worrying about what had happened with the boss, so I spent the next couple of hours calling my wife, calling Adobe, and doing the same legwork that accounts had done. It became very obvious that someone had been using my name and the company card to spend a bunch of money online. Had I been hacked or something? Personal info on the dark web, and these hackers just really wanted Photoshop and Wendy's delivered. It was the Uber Eats that was her undoing. After getting on the phone and talking through what had gone on, and obviously giving my name for the account and everything, the fellow on the phone told me where the food had been delivered. It was in our city, which made me rule out straight away any notion of my data being sold online or something. Now I was suspicious and pissed. I don't like to think the worst of people, but now I was. Listening to my gut, I pulled up Evil's employee information and checked her address. I pulled it up on Google Maps, dropped a pin on her place, and then looked for the address Uber Eats had given me. It was the corner of her effing block. I was furious. When she left work for the day, I got IT to give me access to her laptop. There were some things she had been smart about. The IP address she had been using was the office, which would have tied back to me. She had even had the food delivered to a different address. She had even made a fake email address. But saving her passwords on a work computer was a mistake. I called the boss that night and explained what I had found, and kept the IT guy with me to support the fact that I hadn't just logged into her computer and made it all up. The next day the boss called her into the office and fired her so bad there were red trucks lining up outside the building. When she teary-eyed left his office, I made sure I was standing in the hall sipping a cup of tea. It had gotten cold while I waited for her, but still tasted sweet. I hope she went home that night, because if she did, she would have received some nice goodbye Wendy's delivered by Uber Eats. Paid for on my personal card, of course. Revenge and justice can be the same thing, right? In the end, she was fired. The boss apologized, and we were on good terms when I left in October for a new gig. Story 6. I had to go out shopping today. Nothing big, just some groceries I needed at the last minute. I went to Wally World first, then to a local grocery store for the rest. I go to this store for all my meat because they have butchers and all the meat and seafood fresh. Anyway, I picked up 2 small packages of skinless chicken thighs, as I have a recipe I've been wanting to try out in whole chicken for Christmas dinner. As I was walking away, I heard someone say, "Excuse me, excuse me." I didn't think about whomever it was talking to me. The store was pretty crowded, so I kept walking. Then I felt someone pinch my neck. Not like a small pinch. This woman full on got as much of my flesh as she could between her bony fingers and twisted. I nearly screamed. I said, "Excuse me." I turned around looking at her like WTH. This lady had a full basket of food, soda, and other junk. She had her mask on, but I could tell she was scowling at me behind it. "I'm sorry, but you took the last packages of chicken thighs and I was about to get them." Now I am fighting the urge to curse this woman out. Who the hell pinches a stranger? I bit my tongue while she continued to tell me about her dinner plans. Then she said, "Do you mind giving them to me? I have 3 boys at home and I need to go." I simply say no. I got them first and one of the butchers at the counter might be able to help her. I was about to walk away when she pushed her cart against mine. "I don't have time for that. I need to get home and cook. Give them here. You can get something else." At this point, I just wanted to get away from her. Again, I tell her no and push away to get the last couple things I needed. I thought that was the end of it. Not even close. I'm looking at milk when she full-on rams her shopping cart into my leg. Like I think she got a running start and slammed into my leg. Side note, my left knee is dislocated. I can still walk on it, but it's painful and right now I can't afford the time off for surgery. My doctor put me in a brace that helps me get around till I get surgery. She hit my left leg. My knee just gave out and I hit the floor crying in pain. The woman didn't even blink. I saw her reach into my cart, take my chicken and walk away as if she did nothing wrong. Thankfully, more than enough people had seen what she had done. A couple helped me up while someone else got help. I was crying and sobbing. The pain is so intense. An employee brought a wheelchair for me. Others were asking if I was okay and some customers even ran after the woman. She was stopped at the checkout by a manager who returned my chicken to me while the woman ranted and raved that she had a family to feed. And I could have just given her the chicken 'cause it's Christmas. Eventually, I checked out. A couple employees were kind enough to help me to my car and even load up my groceries. The manager asked if I wanted to call the police or press charges, but I just wanted to get home. He gave me some coupons, apologized, and said they would deal with the woman. I called my brother-in-law on the way home. He met me at my apartment, helped me inside, and unloaded everything for me. As of right now, I am sitting on my couch with a very red and swollen knee. I have taken my anti-inflammatory medication, got it elevated and put some ice on it. Definitely going to need to see my doctor tomorrow, though cause the pain is coming in waves at this point. She could have seriously injured me. Over 2 packs of freaking chicken. Quick edit update. So the store did call the police, but I was gone by the time they got there. An officer contacted me. I got a meeting set up at the station tomorrow after my doctor's appointment. The officer informed me she was questioned and released, not arrested. They do want me to file a formal complaint in order to have her arrested for assault. I promise I'm okay. The swelling has gone down some, and I'm on some painkillers. Another quick update. Promise I'm going to the police station tomorrow after I see my doctor. I will be pressing charges against her. Update 3. I have been at the doctor's office almost all day. I got a CT scan, MRI, and 2 X-rays. Also got some new pain meds, and he's ordered me a new brace as well. Nothing broken, and I won't know the MRI or CT results till tomorrow. Went by the police station and filed a report. They will hopefully be arresting Karen later on today.